Charles McVitie are looking forward to a more conservative administration.
We're quite ecstatic because the end of his reign of terror against the church is near.
He says part of the reason Trudeau is on his way out is the Trump effect.
We're also thankful to Donald Trump for immediately threatening him with massive tariffs. Donald Trump had a tremendous effect because he made everybody think twice about enduring the insanity of this man who has made it impossible to live in Canada.
The new prime minister after the upcoming election is almost certainly going to be Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre. If so, Canada will join a growing number of countries that are moving to the right and embracing populism.
Populism is democracy. I mean, it's what the people want. And the people do not want wokeism. They don't want the politically correct. They don't want the nonsense of the far left.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
World shares are mixed as the U.S. stock market remained closed to observe a national day of mourning for former President Jimmy Carter. Trading in the U.S. bond market will continue until a recommended closure of 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Treasury yields eased a bit more following a strong run higher that rattled the stock market. More news online at afn.net and on the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
As an AFA insider, you're part of a community that stands strong for biblical values and works tirelessly to influence culture and policy with truth, advancing biblical values and ensuring a stronger, upright America for our families and future generations. AFA Insider, formerly AFA Alert, informs you first about AFA's mission and aiding the church in its task of fulfilling the Great Commission. Sign up to receive AFA Insider emails at afa.net.
Welcome to today's issues. Join us for the next hour as we offer a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And good morning, everybody, to today's issues. It is Thursday, January 9th. As the man said, Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildmon today. I'm joined in studio by Wesley Wildmon. Good morning to you, Wesley.
Good morning.
And then Chris Woodward is our news guy today.
Good morning.
To you, Chris.
Good morning.
So it's cold throughout much of the country. And in fact, was just talking to a precious couple that are listeners, Bill and Cheryl Mordick. They're from Grand Rapids, Michigan. They're on their way to Florida.
Which they picked a perfect time of year to do that.
I said to
that
him,
was the obvious.
I said, so you came down south to try to escape the cold, and it's, I don't know what it is outside now, 19 degrees. We're about to get pounded, I think, with a great deal of snow.
Ice.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
some ice.
No. Mississippi, that's the reason I cut you off there, because we would like, they say snow, we would like for it to be snow, and it probably will be for a little bit, but not like other parts of the country that will experience snow. Ours will be quickly turned to good old ice.
To ice. And Ray Pritchard, who's Dr. Ray Pritchard is frequently on this show. We talked to him earlier in the week, and he's in Kansas City, and they got 15 to 18 inches of snow,
yeah.
like you're saying. We usually get some snow. We'll probably get an inch or two, but then we get ice throughout the southeast. Dallas will probably get kind of the same kind of thing, or may already be getting it. So this couple's on their way to Florida, and they stopped by to kind of do a tour. And I said, you were trying to escape the cold weather. And they said, well, we thought we would. So
I am wondering what it's like in Muskegon, or he said Grand Rapids. Let's see if it's probably.
See if it's comparable. It may be warmer up there than down here. And he and Bill again, and Cheryl, they have 8 grown children, 24 grandchildren, and so
same
base
within 5 degrees here there. So
well,
you know, when you were sharing about Ray Pritchard being 15 inches of snow, I just had this vision of him climbing out the window to kind of bail out the snow front door.
and Ray is an avid biker.
That's right.
I'm talking about
that's what I'm saying. He's got to get out there and get the biking thing.
Yeah. So who knows whether he's been doing. He's had a couple of accidents on it, and so I don't know if he's still doing it.
Hey, if I could take just a moment for those that, as we mentioned, we have some guests. They're touring. We have some supporters who are our guests today, and they're visiting our facilities. There's a lot of departments they can see. We've got a new building. So let me just mention this. And we welcome anybody that wants to come visit our facilities. Stop by. They just stopped by, and we just talked to them for a few minutes right before we came on the air. Please go to afa.net/tours. If you go to afa.net/tours, there, if you let us know what day you're interested in coming, that will help us out to make sure that myself or Ed or others will have an opportunity to meet you as well, because we could arrange our schedules in the event we had something that day. We would certainly like to visit with you. So go to afa.net/tours. We do this all throughout the week, so we look forward to hopefully seeing some of our listeners. Open door policy, just let us know you're coming.
Yes, and we do ask that you go ahead and sign up.
That's right.
So we can expect you. And also, since Tim's not here, I'll say it. Make sure you're not wanted by the law.
Yeah, that helps.
You know,
that's the starting point.
That's what Tim always says.
That's
Make
fair.
sure you're not running from the law. But anyway, so we do have multiple times when people will come by to see the ministry, meet as many people as are here and available to meet, get to see some of the studios and some of the departments, as you said.
And it makes it easy for you. afa.net/tours.
Yes.
Right there.
All right, Chris. Speaking of weather, the weather in California it has led to, I'm talking about the dryness out there, has led to terrifying forest fires.
Yes.
These fires are taking lives,
Mm-hmm.
destroying untold millions of dollars of property.
Yes.
And this has gone on since Tuesday, right? Since
Yes.
Tuesday night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this morning at least 5 people are dead. That's going to go up once we are able to figure out what exactly has been destroyed.
Yeah,
I mean,
and who's missing and
Right.
who's, yeah.
I mean, so at least 5 right now. It's going to be a lot more. I hate to say that, but history shows that the at least number on a massive wildfire is going to go up. So we've got at least 5 people dead, 2,000 buildings burned, 100,000 people forced to flee. It's a really terrible situation, one that we definitely need to be praying about for our fellow Americans. I have a lot of sound at our disposal on the fire today, and can I play a clip here? Okay. I want to begin with the soundbite from a guy named Aaron Rabinowitz. Now, he's manager of something called Direct Relief, which is an organization trying to help victims of the California fires. And listen here, he talks about the basic needs of fire victims beyond just the essentials like food, clothing, and water. Clip 1.
So again, what we're focused on right now at Direct Relief is providing those basic essentials. So providing PPE, providing masks, gloves, coveralls, boots, goggles, things for people who are potentially going to be needing to go back to their homes at some point.
That was kind of a unique soundbite, I thought, because generally when fires happen, we are accustomed to hearing and even providing things like the basic essentials. But he's talking about the things you're seeing Anderson Cooper or some Fox News reporter doing live remotes with, the heavy coats, the masks, the goggles, because I don't think we really take into account the fact that it's a dangerous, hazardous situation for you to be in just to try to go back to your house to see whether or not you even still have a house or to get some belongings.
You know, Wesley, the dust and the soot and the smoke that even after a fire passes through is, like Chris is saying, and as this gentleman was saying from California, it's very dangerous. And I think most people,
and the chemicals that are burned up,
Yes.
some of the stuff. So
Yes.
I'm curious about how many days scientists or fire departments would recommend before you go back and kind of visit that area to check on things. I'm guessing there
Good
has to be a
question.
timeline that they would say, 48 hours,
Yeah.
4 or 5 days, whatever, let everything kind of settle. And it would depend on the weather too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I wonder, what's the weather looking like the next 10 days? Is it any better in that area?
Let me Google that.
It is the time of year, my understanding, while you're Googling that, Chris, my understanding is that the so-called Santa Ana winds at this time of year are, first of all, they're helping to drive the fires,
Sure.
making them unpredictable and spurring them to move quickly. But it's very windy time of year. So I don't know whether they can expect any rain to help. By the way, I'm looking at Fox News, their kind of dedicated page to the articles that they're running on this subject of the wildfires in California. And this is an overhead satellite image I'm looking at showing what's called the Eaton fire, because there were at least 5 fires initially. There's some question about whether one of them is contained. But this is in Altadena, California. Should ask Steve Jordahl. He's from that neck of the woods. But it looks like much of the city is burnt out, or at least this part of it. It's really extraordinary. It's just an above satellite image, and you see all the streets laid out, and the blocks for neighborhoods, and all these houses are on fire. And it's an extraordinary image, and it shows some of that area already blackened out because the fires have moved through.
Altadena is located between Santa Clarita and San Bernardino. It's northwest of Los Angeles. It's pretty close, going by the map here. And then in terms of the weather today, in places like Malibu, which is one of the more talked about areas where the fires have been going, it's currently 62 degrees. It's going to get up to about 80 degrees today in Malibu specifically, and wind is about 10 miles an hour right now.
Okay.
Now, I'm looking at between, again, there's this is not over yet, and I don't know what the timeline is. Their expectation for the fires to kind of cease, because it doesn't sound like they're going to be able to get them under control.
Right.
But right now we're sitting between at the low end of $52 billion of damage upwards to $56 billion of damage. In my lifetime, I can't remember a wildfire that caused this much financial and economic damage. Is that correct?
It's definitely one of the worst.
One of the worst in my
and I think
generations.
it's because it is hitting a lot of
cities.
homes.
Yeah, well,
and
expensive
communities.
homes.
Sometimes these wildfires will burn tens of thousands of acres out in
a forest,
not in the forest, or out
prairie.
Yes, but this look, and like I said, the image I saw. If you go to Fox News, that's just extraordinary.
In some cases, this is probably worse than a hurricane or a tornado in some ways. So I wonder how long it's going to take for them to build back their community, and what will be some of the changes and some of the opportunities that come from something this destructive that caught everybody by surprise.
Right.
Now, to go with our discussion today, talking about the damage and the cost and things of that sort, the fire situation is creating an insurance crisis for thousands of Californians who have had their policies canceled or not renewed. Now, Fox's Cheryl Casone was on the air earlier this morning talking about one specific major insurance company leaving Southern California rather than continuing to pay. Clip 2.
This is when the idea of your home insurance, your rental insurance really becomes reality. Most of us never lose our property and have to go through this. Unfortunately, the people in California this morning are waking up to this after losing their homes. Again, reportedly, we're now at 2,000 structures that have been destroyed. Now, there was a report in Newsweek this morning about State Farm. They're the largest insurance company in California. They have reportedly canceled hundreds of homeowners' policies just this past summer in Pacific Palisades specifically, according to Newsweek. And they justified it because they're trying to avoid, quote, financial failure. The California Insurance Commissioner, he spoke to the local Los Angeles affiliate, and he came out and he said, he's telling people, don't sign anything. If you've lost your home and an adjuster shows up at your house today, don't sign anything. Be careful, because the insurance companies, I'm telling you, these adjusters, will give you 70% of what your house is worth, when legally you're supposed to get 100%.
I have posted the link to that Newsweek story on our Today's Issues Facebook page for people to read for themselves.
And just a comparison here, mentioning about economic damage. So in 2023, the Maui wildfires that we may remember, they were between 13 billion and 16 billion. So this is almost 3 times that size economic damage. So.
This Wesley, one of the things from this aspect of the story that Chris just brought up, this is true about areas prone to hurricanes or tornadoes or flooding, earthquakes. Okay. This is kind of a roll of the dice for a lot of people because insurance companies, like every major corporation, are in business to make money. So the more money they have to pay, especially in repeated circumstances, multiple hurricanes may be hitting the Gulf Coast, the Gulf of America, according to Donald Trump. It becomes difficult sometimes for people to get insurance or to find insurance, home insurance we're talking about, that they can pay for. And if they gamble with it, I don't know how many people in Southern California, if I'm sure this story is true, if State Farm was canceling people's insurance over the summer, were they able to get insurance here before? So this is an aspect of it that we sometimes don't think about. We think about the horror of losing members of the family to fires or people losing everything they own. But on top of that, there are insurance issues that just add to the tremendous strain people are under when they're in the midst of this.
Yeah, when I first saw the story a couple of days ago, I obviously devastated, and I was, feeling hurt for those that are right in the middle of it. But I also thought, okay, this will be a one-day news story.
Yeah.
And here we are. What are we, 3 or 4 days in? 3 days in? And
I think it started on Tuesday.
Okay. Well, it just seems like a lot longer because, every time you look, there's no end to it. I don't see an end to it.
Did it start earlier than Tuesday? Maybe I just have that.
Tuesday is kind of a good time frame to mention. I will say it's still a lead story, definitely what news people call the first block news story. The only thing that could trump this tomorrow going through the weekend is a huge winter storm like where we live on north.
Well, they could use a winter storm in California.
They really could.
Yeah, they could certainly use the
ice and
rain, ice, snow, any of that kind of thing. But they're not going to get that in California.
Fortunately.
What else you got? Anything else on this story?
I do. Now, as is always the case with anything, local, state, and federal officials are blamed. And many people are very upset, not just people in Los Angeles, but a lot of Americans on social media last night were really critical of the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, former member of Congress. I think she was actually on Biden's short list for a VP back in 2020. But anyway, she left Congress. She became the mayor of Los Angeles. And she is being hammered today on social media because she was there in Los Angeles. Reporters were standing around her. And I have audio here of a Sky News reporter by the name of David Blevins who's just peppering her with questions. And she's just standing there with her entourage not answering anything. It's almost as if she is ignoring him and his questions. Clip 3.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today? Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position?
Well, you're trying.
And the accent helps.
Yes, it does.
For some comedic relief.
Yeah, maybe she was intimidated by the British accent. I would be.
No, I saw the video. She just refused to look away. She refused to answer the question by looking away. It was pretty embarrassing.
Well,
it wasn't the accent.
She doesn't really have to. Now, the fact that she was out of town, I don't necessarily blame her for that.
That was pre-scheduled, and it was an important event, so I don't blame her necessarily for that. But her not in a rush to get back.
Yes, that
was
is
more problematic. The first when I found out what was going on, I was like, okay, she's already got this. Okay, but then as we're discussing this 2 days later, at some point we got to start making some comments, some plans. You got to start making some changes, and we're not seeing that.
And it's a legitimate question. By the way, Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning, will be with us at the bottom of the hour when we come back from our break. We are going to discuss some of this with her and get her take on some of the political aspects of it. Generally, I don't like jumping on a tragedy and scoring political points for it. We see this sometimes at a school shooting. Sure. The left will say, "We told you we need to get rid of
both
the Second
ways
Amendment."
On either side.
Both ways. Sometimes we do that. However, if if Los Angeles Mayor Karen, is it Bass or Bass? Bass. If the policies of the Los Angeles mayor and Governor Gavin Newsom of California have contributed to the situation, circumstances that have allowed this fire to be even more destructive, that's fair game.
Yeah.
And so the Karen Bass should have to answer for the fact that her own policies. Listen, I read this morning that the federal government gave billions of dollars to, I don't know if it was just Los Angeles area or California, but back in 2014 to upgrade and expand the capacity of their water reservoirs precisely for this and for other uses of the water, and they're still not done. Mm-hmm. So listen, there's plenty of criticism to go around, especially since if the governor of California and the president of the United States, still currently Joe Biden, if they're going to pitch federal money or disaster relief money to the people of California, we have a right to know if their own policies contributed to the circumstances that caused the disaster in the first place.
Yeah.
That's a legitimate discussion.
Currently, and I just shared this on our Today's Issues Facebook page, the LA Times has now written a scathing article about the mayor's absence. As a matter of fact, the LA Times headline is, "Mayor's absence is considered a sign LA underestimated fire risks." Some residents say the mayor should have canceled her trip to Ghana when weather warnings in LA grew increasingly dire. Included with this article is a picture of the mayor at some sort of fire briefing. She's got smoke behind her in the sky, and then standing there looking all, trying to include himself in the photo, I should say, is Governor Gavin Newsom, who himself is being criticized because I don't have this audio. We were at our max in terms of clips. But Governor Newsom was being interviewed by Anderson Cooper and was being asked what about the fact that fire hydrants didn't have any water? What can you say to that? And he was like, we're going to have to go to local officials on that one.
Yeah, he was not equipped to answer a question that he really should have had some. He may. I have no problem with him deferring to local individuals in government to get a better understanding of the situation, but he should have had some answer for the media. He basically shrugged.
He did.
Raised his hands. He said, I don't know, we're going to have to ask the local people.
And
if you're going to show up for a photo op,
mm-hmm.
you should have some understanding of what's happening.
And when you are presumably the front runner for 2028, I know there's a long time between now and 2028, but it's not that far away.
Don't start talking about
that. Will come back to haunt him.
Yes.
They'll use anything he did to California against him, and that's just one more thing.
There's obviously a lot of things we can talk about here, but with the few minutes we got left, have y'all been seeing these clips that are being replayed of the LA fire chief? She's a female lesbian, mm-hmm. and all the clips that the effort that they've gone to be as diverse as possible.
We do have some sound.
We got sound on that. Okay.
Is that yours or Steve Jordahl?
Steve contributed it, but I mean,
that's what happens when we miss a show prep meeting. That's on me, Steve. Steve, that is on me. I apologize. I've taken it from Steve and I've given it to Chris.
Well, let's wait on Steve. Okay. I think he was going to cover some of that, but that is a good. That's what?
It's a deep tease when you tease something further into the show.
Yes,
like your
that is something we're going to get to because if you are spending tax dollars to promote woke policies
and effort,
DEI, rather than filling up the reservoirs with water and giving firefighters what they need to fight fires.
Yes.
Okay. Or if you're looking now, obviously I've never been a fireman.
Sure.
My understanding is, listen, women want to fight fires just like men, but it's a physically demanding job.
Yep. Especially
and I'm not sure
positions of the fire department.
Yes. And I'm not sure that women can always fill the bill in terms of what a man can do. So,
and if they can, great. But not at the expense of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, you cannot. I feel this way about the military as well. Yeah. Police, fire, all kinds of emergency rescue. If you cannot meet the minimum standards of the job, okay, you shouldn't get the job.
Yeah.
Okay, you can still serve.
Sure.
Okay, now, if you're a woman and you can carry the hoses and the equipment and you can carry a body out if you need to, then fine.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you can't, You need to accept your physical limitations, just like if you're a man and can't do that.
Same thing. Yep. Yeah, and we're seeing this over and over again. That this is where DEI gets exposed at its most. When tragedies happen, and you look back and said this could have been prevented in the event that we would have got someone more qualified.
Right.
Either physically, mentally, and what or just trained wise, being more trained.
Right.
So. All right. I guess we'll save the story.
Yeah,
Steve?
let's save that story for Steve.
Stick around.
We got to save something for him.
That's right. That's right.
Now, whatever Jenna wants to talk about with regards to the fire, we'll let her do that.
Sure.
And she's a radio talk show host in her own right, so if she wants to take us there, we'll go there. She will be coming up after the break. We're going to take a few minutes and let you listen to some other things, AFA, AFR related folks. Jenna Ellis will be joining us. We'll be talking with her, getting her take on the fires, but also talking with Jenna about some platform changes. Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, are some things changing in terms of a woke outlook on what happens in social media. Anyway, we'll talk to Jenna about that when we come back. You're listening to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. We'll be back in a few minutes.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildmon.
There's a very ancient legend about a Persian ruler who had 4 sons. His sons were often critical of other people. This was a habit which the father detested very much, so he decided to teach his sons a lesson about being critical. One winter, he sent one of the sons on a journey to look at a mango tree. During the following spring, he sent another of the sons to visit the very same tree. When summer came, he sent the 3rd son to see the tree, and finally, that fall, he sent the 4th son to see the tree. Then the wise old king called all the sons together and asked them about the mango tree. The one who went in the winter described the tree as an old stump. The son who went in the spring said that the tree didn't look like an old stump, but that it was a very beautiful green. The 3rd son said that both of the reports were wrong. He was the son who had visited the tree in the summer, and he said that the tree was covered over with beautiful blossoms. Finally, the 4th son spoke up, the one who had visited the tree during the autumn. He said the tree had fruit which tasted like the finest of all fruits. After his sons had made their report, the father spoke. Each of you has told what you saw, and each of you is right. The difference is that each of you saw the tree at a different season. People are like that mango tree. They are bad and good. They are ugly and beautiful. You can see them in different seasons. Try to see each person as the last of you saw the mango tree at its best. Well, the truth of the matter is that each of us are both good and bad, beautiful and ugly. We can, if we desire, look for the bad and ugly in people, and if that is what we desire to see, then that is what we will see. But if we have enough love in us, we can also see the good and beautiful in people. It all depends on what we're looking for. None of us are without faults. It is true that our faults may not be the same as those of others, and it's equally as true that our faults may not be as glaring as those of others. But in either case, we cannot deny our faults. Carry criticism in your attitude if you desire. It will in no way benefit you. It will not gain for you any friends nor respect, neither will it make you a better person. It will only serve eventually to lead you to loneliness. For throughout the world you cannot find one person who enjoys the company of a continual critic. If you desire to enjoy people and have people enjoy you, then you must look for the good and beautiful. If you want a poem for it, here it is. There's so much good in the worst of us, and so much bad in the best of us, that it hardly becomes any of us to talk about the rest of us. And if you want a scripture for it, here it is. First remove the log which is in your eye, And then you can see to remove the speck which is in your brother's eye.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildmon, a production of the American Family Association.
For he has rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of the Son he loves. Colossians 1, verse 13.
American Family Radio.
This is Today's Issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of Today's Issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of Today's Issues.
And welcome back, everybody. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildmon today. I'm joined in the studio by Wesley Wildmon and Chris Woodward. And now, the always effervescent Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning, heard weekdays at 7 a.m. Central Time on American Family Radio, and host of the On Demand podcast found at afr.net. You can just go to afr.net and look and just click on the podcast drop-down menu and find the On Demand podcast. Jenna, good morning to you.
Good morning. Happy New Year. And I am extra effervescent today because we are experiencing close to freezing temperatures in Florida. And
What?
as a Floridian now, I did not sign up for this. So when you can see your breath and you're more effervescent than usual in Florida, that's not so much a good thing.
Now, don't the what kind of lizards do you have that fall out of the trees when it turns cold in Florida?
Iguanas.
Yeah, the iguanas.
The iguanas.
That's a real thing, right? When the weather gets below a certain temperature, cold, these iguanas, which are everywhere down in Florida, they'll sometimes just fall out of the trees. They're not dead, I don't think. I think they're just slumbering.
They're just freezing, and there are so many Instagram videos. Like, I follow all of the local Florida stuff, which is hilarious. And I have yet to actually see a falling iguana. That may be in store for me in 2025. We'll see. But the interesting thing that I have observed about Florida is that nobody here knows what cold weather shoes are all about. So everybody is out in their house slippers. And I was wondering, I'm like, what are like the people of Walmart all doing right now? What is going on? And I realized it's because that's the warmest shoe that they own. And it was fascinating.
Interesting. Now, I will say this, and Chris is dying to say something here. I will say this. My wife, we've been married for 43 years. I have learned not to question fashion choices, okay? I'm certainly not a man of fashion myself. But the shoes that you can wear out in public and house shoes, we used to call just slippers, now look alike. And I said to her the other day, I said, "You're going out in your slippers?" She said, "No, these aren't slippers. These are like comfortable shoes for going out." So in defense of the people who show up at Walmart, I'm not sure anybody can tell the difference anymore between what you should and should not wear.
It's totally valid. And, the onesies for public are now
coming
thing,
back.
and sweatpants. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think the COVID indoor people just didn't want to go back to regular clothes after we all worked in sweatpants for a solid year.
Well, I will say this, and then we are going to get to some valid news here.
This is news. Come on, Ed.
Yes, this is important.
Breaking.
Tim frequently says that COVID absolutely broke AFA's dress code, because when we all came back from COVID, we used to have jeans. It was Casual Friday
because of you,
and I may have had
you instituted the policy.
I may have had a part to play in it.
Thank you.
And now folks can wear jeans. And Tim, as funny as he is, this is one of his better lines. He said, basically, as long as you don't come to work in your pajamas, the dress code has been relaxed that much.
Yes, it is.
So,
amazing.
Right.
But can you even tell between like actual jeans and the jegging PJs anymore? I mean, I feel like you need to test that, Ed.
I don't even know what that is. What?
Ask your wife. She'll
yes,
know.
okay.
She'll know what jeggings are.
Chris apparently knew.
Yes.
All right, Chris. You had something that you wanted to add to?
I did. So Generally, when Florida has cool temperatures or unseasonably cold weather, there are concerns or news reports that maybe orange juice is going to go up or the price of oranges, because we've all seen the pictures of, like, I have several pulled up here on the computer, frozen oranges, like, hanging from the tree. Have you by chance seen or heard concerns that, things like that are going to be impacted in the weather that you mentioned?
I have not seen any news. I haven't seen anything from any of the Florida government websites talking about that, concerned about that. And I don't think that this particular cold stint is supposed to last that long. But we'll see, because in the forecast, potentially it is supposed to snow in the Magic Kingdom at Disney World for the first time in 50 years. So it's possible.
That's crazy.
That's Joe Biden's fault somehow.
Yes.
I'm sure it is. Yeah.
All right, Jenna, let's get to something a little more serious. I do want to talk to you about Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, but before we do that, what is your take on the situation with these wildfires in California?
Well, at first, it's utterly tragic, and people on social media who are posting, kind of glee of some more famous celebrities' homes being destroyed if they disagree with their political view. I mean, and Republicans and Democrats, left and right. I mean, people who are talking about James Woods, who of course leans conservative, or Mark Hamill, of course, who is famous for Star Wars, his home getting destroyed. I mean, none of that is okay, first of all, and we should all be praying for everyone affected. But this really boils down to the utter failure of leftist policies. And I think Trump is absolutely right that Gavin Newsom needs to resign, as well as the Los Angeles fire chief, as well as the mayor, because when you look at the diversity, equity, and inclusion policies that were promoted and prioritized over actually having good policy surrounding natural forest fires and wildfires, which are common, unfortunately, in LA, this was just an utter failure of responsiveness. And if you contrast that in that leadership compared to, let's say, in Florida with Governor DeSantis, I mean, we go through a hurricane season every year. I've been through 2 now. As a Floridian, the response and the preparedness beforehand is impeccable. And even though, obviously he can't prevent hurricanes, the response to that can be so timely that they can mitigate the damage as quickly as possible, get out, save lives, all those things. None of that is happening in California. Why? Because they don't care. They would rather prioritize their ideology than basic facts about nature, the laws of nature and of nature's God. I'll quote the founders on that. And so I agree with President Trump that Newsom needs to resign. I mean, basically the entire government of California needs to make like Justin Trudeau and, just get out.
Well, because there are policy considerations. We talked about this in the first segment. There are policy considerations in terms of what you do with water. If you're going to use water to fill up reservoirs or to protect, as in the case of California, to protect a particular species of fish, that makes a big difference where that water goes, because there is certainly proof that firefighters are having a problem in certain areas finding water. And so these kinds of policies, as well as the burn bans and not burning through some of the underbrush when that's feasible to remove some of the fuel for these wildfires because you're worried about certain critters that might lose their homes, those are all policies that will change the level of devastation, right?
Yeah, and the only critters that the government should be concerned about losing their homes are human beings.
Yep, I agree.
Right.
That needs to be the priority. And the concern that I have as well is, are we going to actually learn from this disaster? Because we're seeing the DEI policies and the globalist policies and all of the woke leftism that has had utterly disastrous consequences for all of the reasons that you just mentioned, Ed. And yet we're still prioritizing DEI in other places and other commercial places and other government places. And so the next potential wildfire that could be just around the corner, we need to prevent that up front by utterly ridding corporations, government, and DEI out of absolutely everything.
All right, is it okay if we switch topics now?
Yes, go ahead.
Time we got. Jenna, this is Wesley Wildman here. I wanted to ask you a couple questions about, or start with one question about the Mark Zuckerberg. I mentioned either yesterday or the day before his motives to what he's doing. Obviously, we can question, why now, and we can how sincere is he and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, it seems to me that the comments he's making, and I'll read one of them. This is Mark Zuckerberg on Fox and Friends. He said the recent elections feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing free speech. Then he says, so we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expressions on our platforms. And he says that several other things very similar to that. What do you make of this? Do you think that is it from an impact standpoint, political or cultural impact standpoint? Is it kind of for Facebook? Is it kind of like too late and it's more like just kind of doing it, or do you think more so this could have an impact on how people make decisions or think about America based on him kind of opening up the platform or opening it back up in the same way that X has?
Well, I think you're entirely right to be skeptical. I'm skeptical as well. And I had Christian Losfall, who is the digital director over at the Heritage Foundation, on Jenna Ellis in the morning on the radio program. So listeners, if you missed that this morning, you can listen to that interview on our podcast page. And it was in the last segment this morning. And his comment, which I think was very wise analysis, is that Zuckerberg is really just responding here and openly admitting that he's responding to the current tenor of the community, right, and of politics. And so as soon as that changes, is he going to implement the censorship that we've just experienced? I mean, this isn't like he had a change of heart. It's not like he's saying, oh, you know what, guys, I was really wrong. I see the lessons from COVID, for example. So I think we're wise to be skeptical. He also hasn't really given any particular detail as to how the algorithms are actually going to change. And I think that we need to have that information. But this is where, and I asked Christian Losfall this morning, is this a time for perhaps the Republican trifecta to actually legislate around Section 230 and once and for all say that the digital public square, people who utilize that have a right to be free from not only just outright censorship and suspension, but even things like shadow banning and throttling. And I mean, visibility is a huge thing. If you can't be seen, then no one can engage with your content. So there are a lot of different ways that Congress could actually do their job and have almost like a consumer protection type of thing with these algorithms having transparency, but then also a First Amendment protection if this is actually deemed a public utility, which I think as we're heading into 2025, it's far past time that this has to be something more like a phone company where, AT&T and Verizon can't throttle me and my message reach depending on whether or not they prefer my content.
Mm-hmm. This is a really important issue. And by the way, I absolutely agree with both you and Wesley in terms of Mark Zuckerberg, because he may have single-handedly turned the 2020 election with his Zuckerbucks, going into these communities and driving turnout and maybe ballot harvesting in Democratic cities. So I think we're all right to be skeptical. But this issue that you just raised, Jenna, about what constitutes the public space, the public square, is critical. And I'm not sure what the answers are. You're an attorney. I'm not. But I do know we have had here at AFA and AFR, we've had run-ins with credit card processors who basically canceled us, would not allow our donors to give to AFA because these credit card processors and one particular credit card, Discover, would not allow, because they were looking at the SPLC and the fact that they'd put us on a hate list, they would not allow us for our supporters to give via their credit card. We've heard of debanking. I mean, these kinds of things, credit cards, banks, as well as social media platforms, increasingly they are the only way into the public square. And if these all go woke or become anti-Christian, it becomes extremely problematic.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I mean, this isn't just about the digital public square. This is also about a right to be free from political viewpoint discrimination, just like we have a right against religious discrimination, for example. And so, why didn't we write that into the Civil Rights Act and expand the definition of those types of rights to access instead of writing in, the SOGI language, which was utterly ridiculous. But you're absolutely right, because if companies can discriminate for political viewpoint, then a lot of times what happens, and Seth Dillon from the Babylon Bee expresses this well when he calls it soft censorship, where we often then just don't post our opinions, or we're not as loud about them because we fear getting canceled or censored. And so we're doing the job of the censorship anyway for them. And he encourages against that. And I would echo that to say, we need to stand up and not do the censoring for them. And one of the reasons that I love and appreciate the American Family Radio Network is that we can't be canceled here, and we are not going to back down from speaking truth or self-censorship. And that's part of the reason that I love being at this network, because we don't have any of those types of parameters, but we've got to make sure that AFA as a whole and Christian organizations as a whole don't encounter that type of thing at businesses or other places that we need to function our ministry.
Well, and to your point of the self-censorship, this is one of the concerns traditionally that have driven the protection of the First Amendment, is the chilling nature of policies on free speech. I just saw it's within the last year, a survey of professors at major colleges and universities who are conservative, and there are not a whole lot of them percentage-wise on these college campuses, but they said they self-censor because they don't want to get canceled. So the chilling effect of this kind of discrimination, soft or hard, either way, can be devastating to free speech. And it is a battle worth fighting. And I hope Mark Zuckerberg, Meta CEO, I hope he's had a change of heart. But like you, Jenna, I am suspicious that if the winds changed again, what would he do in terms of his influence? Would he then switch back to being an oppressor of opinions with which he disagrees? So anyway, great discussion. Jenna, thank you. Any idea what you'll be talking about tomorrow on your show? I know sometimes that's a little fluid, but what can folks expect?
Yeah, so I'm actually really excited for tomorrow's radio show. I'm going to have Ryan Helfenbein, who is the executive director of the Standing for Freedom Center at Liberty University, on to talk about this ongoing debate on X about whether or not Christians, Jews, and Muslims worship the same God. So we're going to dive deep into a theological topic tomorrow. And then for On Demand, which is every Friday, that podcast, one of our listeners wrote in and asked about this report that there are additives to cow feed that are untested, and we don't know how they're affecting the livestock, and so therefore we don't know how they're affecting the humans that are then eating the byproduct or the cows themselves. And so have a really great guest on for that. We'll be doing a deep dive. So a lot of fun stuff for your Friday.
As long as you just don't take my bacon, we'll be good. Just don't take the bacon.
Listen,
all right,
bacon is a top 5 food.
Yeah, that's right.
100%.
Absolutely.
And
And
thankfully,
if you find out something
the
about
New
bacon, I don't want to know.
That's right.
like hot dogs, right? Nobody wants to know what's in them.
Stop.
All right. Thank you, Jenna. God bless you and all the great work you're doing, not just here on American Family Radio, but especially here. We're very appreciative of your guests and your insights and all the work you do. And be careful of falling iguanas.
Thank you. I will. So I appreciate that. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Happy New Year.
All right.
Head on a swivel there in Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a real thing. My father.
I'm having a hard time believing you. I'm guessing.
Oh no, this is a real thing.
Okay, the news reporters just fact checked you and said yes. He
trust me. I'm a reporter.
Yes. Well, my dad, who passed away a couple of years ago, his wife, she lives down in Florida, and when we went down to visit, when my dad was still alive, and we've been down there to visit. His widow is well since then. But we do talk about this, and she says, no, this is a real thing. They will just, because their body temperature, it's almost like they go into hibernation.
Yeah.
And they will just drop out of trees. And some of them are big.
Not flying iguanas,
No.
falling iguanas.
Falling iguanas. So.
Yes.
Anyway, that's a real thing. Folks, look it up.
Yeah, sure.
I wouldn't lie to you.
I'll save you the time. Just go to our Today's Issues Facebook page, where just now I posted a story from AccuWeather, and the headline is, Florida residents warned to prepare for falling iguanas amid temperature drops.
It sounds like a Babylon Bee headline. It does. It sounds absurd, but it's a real deal.
It may be the source of a movie on Sci-Fi before we know it.
Yes.
Falling iguanas.
There's no better time to use the phrase "heads up." Heads up for falling iguana. No, literally.
Yes.
Heads up.
Heads up. Who wants to? Yeah, but be careful. Who wants to get a face full of falling iguana?
Yeah.
All right.
Real quick, this would be a nice way, I think, to kind of cap off recent comments from all of us about things like DEI policies and big tech doing things they shouldn't do, that the public and investors and consumers don't want them to do. I've got some audio here. It's a 45-second clip of activist Robbie Starbuck. He's the guy out there fighting DEI policies pretty much on a daily basis now, alongside many other individuals and organizations. But Robbie is among the many people out there saying corporations just need to be neutral. End of story. Clip 11.
And for those of you who are new to watching my videos, you might be wondering, what is corporate neutrality? And it's very simple. Companies need to stay out of divisive issues. Unless it's related directly to the regulation of their business, they should not be involved in politics. We don't want to know what Macy's thinks about trans rights, okay? And you know what? If they want to speak up and talk about it, we don't want to spend our money there. We have a right as customers to know how the money's being spent later, and then we can decide if we want to give our money to that company. And in many cases now, we are waking up and saying, no, we don't want to give our money to this company that hates our values and everything we believe in. So that is why we're taking this stand. We want companies to get out of the divisive issues. And that means I don't want them taking on my politics either and advocating for my policy positions. I'm just saying neutral. Let's stay out of the way of politics and divisive issues and just act normal, sell great products, and everybody can exist without any more division.
That was easy to understand.
I could just put that in a story and go, I'm Chris Woodward, and that would be the end of the story. There you
just act normal. I like it.
Act normal. Listen.
Stay out of politics.
This is Robbie Starbuck, which I think I said last year
is
awesome. One of the all-time great names. Mm-hmm. I mean, it sounds like a character in Battlestar Galactica or something, but he just kind of came out of nowhere. I think he hit at the right time. I think, in fact, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong here, but he caught on right during the Bud Light fiasco?
Around that time.
Yeah, and I think people were just growing tired of, I mean, AFA and other groups have been saying this since the late 80s, early 90s, to companies, to Hollywood, to Disney when we first started a boycott of Disney back in 97, I think, 98. We said, look, all we're saying is just remain neutral. Okay. That's been the request on the part of social conservatives and Christians for 30-something years. But Robbie Starbuck has hit at the right time because people now see the damage that all this kind of stuff is doing, and it was a perfect storm for this young man. I say he's a young man. I think he's in his 30s, kind of like you guys, okay? So you guys are young men, too, to me, anyway, when you're in your 60s or thereabouts. And it's just, people are saying, yeah, that's part of the solution we want to see. Just remain neutral.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
Because, and it's Michael Jordan that said years ago when he was asked, why don't you emphasize one or the other? He said, because both people buy my product.
Yeah, Republicans buy sneakers too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's simple. And I think that type of thinking, again, we can be critical or skeptical of Mark Zuckerberg, but I do think that's at least from a political standpoint or a rationale standpoint, I do think he's landing on that plane. Landing on that tarmac because why not just allow both people on both sides to share their thoughts on Facebook and not censor to get involved or police it?
Well, I think a lot of this woke DEI emphasis on the part of major corporations came in the wake of the George Floyd protests.
Sure.
And a lot of these companies wanted to prove that they weren't racist.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
As
right.
if anybody was accusing them of being racist before that.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they jumped on that bandwagon, and now they're getting caught in the cultural crossfire, and they're realizing that our number one job is to sell widgets, to make and sell widgets, to use an old economics 101 kind of a term, where we make products and we sell products. And to your point about Michael Jordan, guess what? We want everyone to buy these products.
Yeah.
So why are we getting involved in these cultural battles? I hope that continues. It is true that the pendulum does swing back and forth, and sometimes companies will change their minds. But at the moment, we congratulate Robbie Starbuck because he's getting a lot of these companies to back off those policies. McDonald's is the most recent example of that. So good on you, Robbie Starbuck. Still love the name and hope you have continued success. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break for news. You're listening to Today's Issues. We'll be right back.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio. The Stand provides a Christian perspective on current issues that are important to your family. Produced by the American Family Association, this monthly magazine is full of articles and stories about people who are making a difference in their community and around the world. Sign up today and receive a free 6-month subscription. Visit thestand.net or call 1-800-326-4543.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. As multiple wildfires threaten Southern California, it's important to understand the sheer size of the devastated region.
For people who aren't familiar with Los Angeles County, it may be difficult to grasp the scope of the area where wildfires continue to burn, destroying whole neighborhoods. LA County takes up 4,084 square miles. That's about 800 miles larger than the area of Delaware and Rhode Island combined. It's also home to almost 10 million people, according to 2023 census data. That makes it the most populated county in the U.S. and larger than the populations of at least 40 states. It's also one of California's original 27 counties, and next month it will mark 175 years since its establishment. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
President Donald Trump returned to Capitol Hill on Wednesday to meet with Republican Senate leadership to strategize on his agenda. The president also reiterated his desire to acquire the Panama Canal.
Panama Canal, look, they're taking advantage of us. They charge more for our ships than do any other ships. They charge more for our Navy to go through. We built it. We gave it to them for $1. In other words, we gave it to them for nothing. The most expensive structure ever built in the history of our country, relatively speaking.
The state of Louisiana is preparing to sue the Biden administration in an effort to reverse President Biden's 11th-hour ban on new offshore drilling and further oil and natural gas development on more than 625 million acres of U.S. coastal and offshore waters. Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill says they are not going to take this lying down.
It is kind of interesting. I think there could be an interesting delegation problem with the way that Congress has handed this power over to the president, which he can exercise purely by executive order and then not have it challenged any other way. We certainly will ask and hope that Congress acts quickly to undo this, but we will litigate those issues and make sure that we're not just standing idly by waiting to see if Congress can do something.
New York State's highest court will not prevent a Manhattan judge from sentencing President Donald Trump on felony convictions.
The New York State Court of Appeals is denying President-elect Trump's request to stop New York City Judge Wildmon from sentencing him on more than 30 counts of business records crimes in the so-called hush money case. The judge has already hinted there would be no actual punishment handed down, but now President Trump's lawyers are asking the U.S. Supreme Court to step in, claiming the Manhattan court violated the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity. The sentencing is scheduled for Friday. Eben Brown, Fox News.
And finally, Christians and otherwise concerned individuals' outrage may have paid off after a display of so-called art at a Texas museum portraying naked children.
The Modern Art Museum in Fort Worth, Texas, has gained attention in recent days over accusations it's promoting child pornography. It's featured an exhibit called Diaries of Home, which had several pictures displayed depicting children in sexualized poses. Shariah Coulter is Chief Communications Officer with the Danbury Institute. Coulter told AFN about her team's work here.
It's egregious, first of all. We first heard about this story from the Dallas Express newspaper just a few days after Christmas, and we're shocked that there was naked children shown in art exhibits at the museum. So we thought, surely that can't be the case. So to do our due diligence, we went to check it out and make sure and confirm that that was happening. And indeed it was, and it was even worse than was reported.
Dozens of pastors, religious liberty groups, and concerned citizens said in a letter, quote, "These images are presented under the guise of art, but in reality they sexualize children and exploit their innocence," according to Todd Starnes. Starnes also reported that a museum plaque there described the collection as showcasing, quote, "children naked, moody, and in suggestive situations to evoke an edgy, dark side of childhood." Coulter indicated, however, that the public outrage may have paid off.
The Dallas Express put out a story on January 6th saying that a warrant has been issued and executed regarding the images of child pornography and that they were secured as potential evidence. And the story said that they will not be visible to the public while that investigation is pending. So as far as we know at this point, it seems like the images are not visible.
I'm Bronson Woodruff.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Thoughts of the child you were carrying keep pouring over in your mind. A deep, unrelenting sadness overshadows your days, and you wonder if you will ever feel whole again. There is hope and healing from a reproductive loss. Call the International Helpline, 866-482-LIFE, and talk with someone who has been where you are. Your call is confidential, and we will help you find healing. 866-482-LIFE.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome back. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildmon today. I'm joined in studio by Wesley Wildmon and now Steve Paisley Jordahl.
Good morning, everybody. Good. And I am wearing Paisley today.
Yes, you are. And I like that shirt. Blue and black are my favorite colors, and that shirt has both. So it's kind of that's a winner.
He's got the Paisley, and I've got the plaid flannel.
And you're just boring.
I just wore the heaviest sweater I could find in my closet, and
see, I'm a Colorado boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't bother me at all.
Doesn't.
Oh, that's right. Just another day. You probably didn't even put on a jacket this morning, did you?
No.
No.
I'm wearing what I'm wearing. Most of the time, it's like all I have to worry about is getting from the car, which is warm, to the office, which is warm.
Yes.
It's like, 30 feet?
Yeah, by the time, yeah, that's true. By the time you put on the jacket, you're taking it off again. I get it.
Yes.
I get it.
That's
If
right.
I was mowing the lawn or doing something outside, I'd put a jacket on, but yeah.
And if you're mowing the lawn in January, you ain't living in the South.
Exactly.
Or anywhere, yeah. Where is there anywhere in January that it's warm?
Yeah, Australia.
Okay, fair enough.
Australia. Yes, but is that a city or a continent? I mean, is it an island or a continent?
Well played. Well played. For those faithful, we're not going to redo that. But
No,
that was
right.
special. That was a special nugget for our faithful listeners that listen all the time. They know.
That's right.
They know
exactly
If you know,
what we're
you
referring
know.
to.
You know, you know.
If
And
you know, you know.
And if you don't, now's the time to become a faithful listener.
There
That's
you go.
2025, January, New Year.
Because
it.
that we just had that little exchange. That's premium content right
That's
there.
the word I was looking for,
Yep,
premium
that's
content.
All right, Steve, one of the things, there's been so much going on this week. One of the things I don't think we've talked about, maybe we did when I wasn't on the show, is the funeral of Jimmy Carter that's going on now.
Yeah, well, we didn't the funeral's only been this morning, so you've been on the show for the entire funeral.
Oh,
so we
okay.
haven't talked about the
Okay.
funeral.
All
We
right.
have talked a little bit about Jimmy Carter
Yes.
before, but I've been keeping an eye on a couple things. I watched a little bit of this funeral, and there's some really good eulogies for Jimmy Carter. The one that caught my ear was delivered by the son of Gerald Ford. I don't have his name, but apparently late in their lives, they became, after they ran and were both ex-presidents, they became fast friends.
Okay.
Jimmy Carter and Gerald Ford. And Jimmy Carter said to Gerald Ford, "I'd like you to give a eulogy at my funeral." And Gerald Ford said to Jimmy Carter, "I'd like you to do the same." And they kind of laughed because Carter was 10 years older than Ford.
Yeah.
Didn't think, whoever outlasts the other guy gets
Right.
to. Well, they're both gone now. And Gerald Ford's son delivered the eulogy.
Interesting.
That he had written, and it was very well spoken.
So Gerald Ford had written the eulogy in advance.
Yeah.
And by the way, when Richard Nixon resigned from office, Gerald Ford finished his term and ran in 1976 for, I guess that would be considered running for election, maybe not re-election. But Jimmy Carter beat him in 76. So that was the political rivalry that started in 76. You're saying, and I did not know this, that both Ford and Carter became fast friends after that election.
After that. Interesting thing about Ford. Now, I don't know if this is still true, but at one point he was the only person to serve as president that had never been through any kind of presidential primary or election.
Because he
replaced Spiro Agnew.
Spiro Agnew, who resigned, who ran with Nixon in 72.
Right.
I don't know if he ran with Nixon in 68. Maybe he did.
I don't know.
But anyway, he resigned. Spiro Agnew, the vice president, resigned because of an ongoing corruption investigation.
Right.
And so he
And
dropped
so
out.
Nixon appoints Ford.
Yes.
Then Nixon has to resign, and Ford, who was, I guess, a congressman from Michigan. He all of a sudden finds himself president of the United States.
Yeah.
And no one ever,
He was actually an excellent athlete, although he had one stumble coming down some stairs, I think. And then from then on, Chevy Chase on Saturday Night Live mocked Gerald Ford as if he was some kind of dweeb, but he was actually quite a football player.
Yeah, he was a good football player.
Yeah.
Joe Biden gave his eulogy, and they have him on his meds. It was all good.
Yeah.
Although he always kind of sounds a little angry when he's talking. He did today. It's like Jimmy Carter was a good friend.
Oh.
I'm not joking. And
well,
we all want to live like Jimmy Carter. It's like he's always a little bit angry.
I think that's a lot of that. I'm guessing that has to do with his mental and physical decline. I don't know if he's even sure of himself or what he's saying. So he's trying to convince himself of everything he's saying by yelling.
I don't want to be critical of Joe Biden on this particular issue because there's just so much else we can be critical about.
Sure.
And your day's coming.
But you got
and
one.
my day's coming. So what I'm going to say is that when you get older, you go in one or two directions. In other words, your temperament, your personality kind of hardens in one direction or another. And you either become really cranky, kind of like, hey, you kids, get off my grass kind of thing, or you become really jovial. And I think
like passive or just whatever.
Well, you
happens.
just, you like grandpa, you just, hey, yeah, whatever. And I think Joe Biden is on the cranky side of the spectrum.
I think he is.
Although I will,
you just
in
use
his
spectrum
defense,
and Joe Biden in the same sentence.
What's that?
You just use spectrum and President Biden in the same sentence.
In his defense,
that's all I heard.
I will
spectrum.
In his defense, I will say he was done wrong by his own party.
Yeah.
And he may be resentful of anyone. So anyway, we're way off course.
Yes,
here.
we are. All right,
Another
bring us
interesting
back.
thing that happened at the funeral, all the presidents, the living presidents, were there and sitting together, right? So on the front row, because he's currently president, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
The back row, it was in order of when they were president. So it was Jimmy Carter, Gerald, what's the guy, Democrat?
Oh, Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton. I don't know. I can remember that name. So it was Bill Clinton, and then it was George W., and then it was Obama, and then it was Trump. And at one point, Trump and Obama, they lean in, they're talking to each other, and they're kind of look like they're having a good conversation, laughing a little bit and everything. Well, of course, there's no microphones to pick that up, but thanks to the internet, we have everybody's opinion about what they said.
Oh, man.
Oh, boy. This is going to be fun. We got 18 minutes left of this.
Well, apparently, a guy named Michael Anthony Lee says, Trump said, I told you not to run Joe Biden. How'd that work out? To which Obama said, look, we both know I was the real president, so it worked out just fine.
But by the way, so you got more of this?
A couple more. Give us a couple more. We need at least 2 more.
Okay.
No more, though. At least no more.
Yes.
Donald Trump, I'm going to buy Greenland. Barack Obama, I know, Don. Trump to Obama, remember the time you said I'd never be president?
He did say that.
All right.
So, by the way, were they, just in terms of the logistics, were they sitting also with their spouses?
Every spouse was there except for Michelle Obama.
Oh, okay. All right.
And Doug Emhoff was sitting next.
So Bill Clinton was sitting there, as well as Hillary Clinton, who was also never president.
Right.
So, that's uncalled for. That was not okay.
All right.
We'll move on. Anyway, so that is for all, as far as we know, Jimmy Carter was a born-again Christian.
Yep.
I disagreed with many of his policies and his views on biblical subjects. But that
he left the Southern Baptist Church over women in the pulpit.
Yeah, he in his life he swung, including on the issue of same-sex marriage and all that. He swung away from biblical fidelity. But that's not unusual in America. We have entire denominations that have done that.
Yeah, well, the funeral was full of faith and Scripture and everything.
Yeah, okay.
As befits him.
Good.
So we got some breaking news. You know that the Biden administration had changed Title IX. They'd added gender identity, and that's the reason you get men playing in women's sports.
Right.
Because all of a sudden,
even
Title
threatening
IX,
school districts.
Right. Title IX it deals with women's rights in schools. Well, a federal court has ruled that I'll read it. It says, because the final rule and its corresponding regulations exceed the Department of Education's authority under Title IX, violate the Constitution, and are the result of the arbitrary and capricious agency action, the plaintiff's motions for summary judgment will be granted. Now, this was Women's Law Forum was suing on behalf of women, so they won the case. And this is from May Mailman, who is the director of the Independent Women's Law Center. She said, Biden's absurd Title IX rewrite is ended nationwide. It is abundantly clear that discrimination on the basis of sex means discrimination on the basis of being male and female. Expanding the meaning on the basis of sex to include gender identity turns Title IX on its head.
It absolutely does. Now, before we discuss this a little bit further, what court was this? Is this a district?
It was court? It was a district court. It was a district court. But here's the thing: we now, or in a couple days, are going to have a Trump Justice Department.
Right.
They're not going to be challenging
and Department of Education and all that.
Right. So effectively, this is the last ruling.
Well, Wesley, this is a welcome bit of sanity to this issue, because with the quotes that Steve was just reading, it is absolutely true that the whole idea of Title IX was to protect women, and then because of this gender dysphoria insanity, the laws protecting women in sports, for example, were turned on their heads so that women come out on the bad side of the ledger.
Yep.
And men like Will Thomas, swimming as Leah Thomas, were taking trophies and scholarships from women. I hope this is a bizarre moment in history that we all can look back on and say, what were people thinking? But at least we have a sane ruling from this federal court.
Yeah, and you got to think that that'll trickle down into high school sports and other.
I think Title IX, doesn't it control high school as well?
It should, absolutely. But go ahead.
Well, now help me understand then, because There is such. I mean, there's you got conferences. There are multiple layers here because you wonder why there's not just a federal ban on why some high schools are doing it but others aren't, and then that's because they're in a different conference, right? Some conferences allow it, some don't. Some school districts allow it, some don't. Some states do, some don't.
It has been a kind of patchwork application because you had entire states that so disagreed with what the Biden administration's Department of Education was trying to accomplish.
Right.
They said, we're not doing that.
Right.
And some of them joined lawsuits of one sort or another.
Yeah, there was a patchwork, but that's what the Biden administration was trying to overrule.
Yes.
They put this Title IX regulations, and it does apply to high schools.
Okay.
They said, okay, we don't care what your local policy is. If you want any funds from the federal government, colleges and high schools need those, then you're going to abide by or you let transgender people locker rooms.
You're thinking of like I think you're thinking of like the International Olympic Committee,
right?
And some of the collegiate sports governing agencies. Some of them said you decide on your own school.
That's right.
The International Olympic Committee said whatever group is governing particular sports, whether it's swimming or gymnastics, you decide. We're not going to make the call. So,
and this is very exciting to know that President Trump's going to do something about this. And now, will this have obviously have an impact on like the actual sport game as it's being played out? But how will this go? I guess then that will answer the question about men and women's locker room too. Then, right? If they can't play on the team or
not necessarily, because, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong. I think what this ruling says is that the Title IX actions on the part of the Biden administration trying to force every school to abide by its twisted understanding of gender, that those actions are unconstitutional, exceed the authority granted by Congress. However, individual states can still pass their own laws,
right?
Saying you've got to, if a boy thinks he's a girl,
we'll fight at that level next. Then
yes,
yeah.
So states, it's now back to the states to fight those battles in their state legislatures.
So Title IX is a federal law that prohibits sex discrimination in schools, not just athletics, but in schools,
right,
which would speak into the locker room issue.
Yes.
Now that they have overturned this, the schools that want to allow men or guys into girls' locker rooms won't be able to use Title IX as an excuse.
Right.
And will now be subject to lawsuits, and they just got their backing taken away.
Because now they can't say, well, the federal government told us to do it.
Right.
Okay, good. Listen, this is
good news.
You said breaking news, and this is, as you said, Wesley, this is good news, great news for people like Riley Gaines and others who have been fighting this. AFA has been fighting it as well, passionately to protect women. This, for us, it started with the Target boycott. That has nothing to do with Title IX, but the Target boycott when they said, hey, guess what we're doing? And they patted themselves on the back. We're going to allow men into girls' changing areas and bathrooms. I think a lot of people, that's a bridge too far for most people in this country.
We got a Robbie Starbuck on Target.
Target.
You know, he's been good with everybody else. He could probably resolve this thing.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, he's on a roll, no doubt.
Hey, we continue to watch also the fires in L.A., and I have tons of sound we can get through. We might not get to all of it, but let me start here. This is has taken a number of well-known actors and people their homes, because this is in the Hollywood Hills, and it's a lot of people that
Malibu, all these areas.
So James Wood, he's a conservative actor. You all know who James Wood is. Wood. He lost a home.
Yes.
And so
he was emotional about it.
He was talking with the local TV station who was interviewing him, or maybe, and this is what he had to say, cut 12.
Laura, with all due respect, if it is true that things were handled this way, if it is true that Gavin Newsom is the absolute blithering idiot that I believe he is in the way he has handled fire management in this state again and again and again and again. This isn't a wake-up call. This is the kind of thing they have tribunals for, where they try people and say, you had an oath of office to perform certain duties. When you're the fire chief, this isn't a social justice exercise that you're in charge of. This is you getting water to areas that need water because there are fires in 100-mile-an-hour winds burning houses to the ground.
He went on to say, we lost our home, but that's nothing compared to the 5 people who lost their lives. So,
yeah, and we had Jenna Ellis on in the last hour, and she mentioned something. We never did come back and revisit it. Wesley, I've seen on X comments about James Wood losing his house. I haven't seen Jenna mention this about Mark Hamill, who's a liberal.
Yeah.
He's very liberal. James Wood, very conservative. And people basically saying you deserved it because it's karma, because of your political views. And I disagree with doing that for either side.
Absolutely.
When somebody has a tragic event like this, you don't. I mean, it's biblical when Jesus said, I think it's in the book of Luke. It seems like chapter 13 is what's coming to my mind, but he said, "Don't say that the tower that fell in Siloam and crushed those individuals, they must have been more wicked than anybody else because judgment's coming for all of you." To me, that's the attitude that people should have. Is this kind of thing can happen to anyone? Don't get self-righteous.
The just and the unjust
yes.
alike.
Yeah, I don't buy much into it.
Yeah, and that I've been down that road with people before. It's completely unnecessary. It doesn't make a point. I mean, what difference does it make?
Right.
How one person falls that way and I may fall on a different way. The point is that there's a problem here that could have been not completely, in this case, not completely necessarily eliminated, but it could have been mitigated.
Yeah.
But by some policies that were
right.
And again, now the bigger this gets, the more it's going to be scrutinized and the more you're going to find. And so I mean, if this was a 4-hour burn, this is not,
right.
But at this point, there's so much damage, you got to think that something could have been done differently.
Yes.
A fire hydrant not having water?
Right. Well,
we got to answer for this.
Yes. And so I guess the point I'm making is, folks, no matter what your political persuasion, you don't gloat over someone else's misfortune. On the other hand, it is certainly valid to talk about, like James Wood was doing, talking about the policies that may have led to the disaster, or if other policies have been followed, might have mitigated against it.
And he mentioned that the fire chief shouldn't be doing a social experiment. And I remember I heard you, Wesley, were talking about some who the fire chief is.
We had some audio from the L.A. fire chief.
The fire chief in Los Angeles is Kristen Crowley. And Kristen Crowley, this is
I wouldn't know her name at first because all she talks about is being a lesbian.
Well, and
so
here's the thing.
She didn't really introduce herself.
Here's the thing. This was recorded months ago, so well before the fire. Listen to cut 8.
I'm super inspired.
She took time out of her already busy schedule to tell us about her vision for the department's future, one that includes a 3-year strategic plan to increase diversity.
People ask me, well, what number are you looking for? I say, I'm not looking for a number. It's never enough.
Out of 3,300 city firefighters, only 115 are women right now. She's already looking at ways to change that. She's quick to point out that doing so has a greater purpose, attracting the best and brightest for the job.
They feel included, they feel valued, and they feel part of a cohesive team.
The chief also checks another box when it comes to inclusivity and diversity at this department. She's a proud member of the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. Now, back to the fire we're talking about here.
Listen, I hope no one misunderstands what I'm saying. Gay people can be firemen and firewomen. I don't know what you call them. I'm fine if you're qualified. to be a fireman.
But of course, they do the DEI at the expense of reality of doing the job.
Now, there was, we'll end with this, there was one man on the street, some reporter just grabbed a guy going by.
There you go, man on the street, not a woman.
Who seemed a little bit, he didn't know there was a fire going on? I'm not sure, but listen to what he has to say. This got 7.
Why is there a fire happening right now?
There are multiple fires that are taking place.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're in the news though. You're supposed to know.
Well, I don't know how it started. We don't know how it started. There,
I think
winds.
It's all the gay people in LA.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
She said, "Okay."
Listen, that's like live radio,
right?
You never know what's going to happen, and if you're on the street and you're doing reports and someone comes up, you're going to have to deal with every situation.
Except we knew.
Yeah.
We know, and we played it anyway.
Hey, do we have time to? We probably don't have time to play the one where the news guy was saying we have plenty of water.
34 seconds. That probably not enough time.
We can't. Yeah. All right. Well, Brent Creeley just ruined it. Our producer.
Yeah, Brent's in charge at the time.
Yes. Anyway, it was pretty funny because there was a news anchor saying nobody's told us that they're running out of water, and they went to the street where they had the reporter. And the reporter said, multiple firemen have told me there is no more water.
Yeah.
And anyway, I live for those kind of moments. All right, folks, that closes out our Thursday, January 9th edition of Today's Issues. More great programming is directly ahead on American Family Radio. We hope you are able, if you're living in a part of the country that's getting hammered by cold, snowy, icy weather, that you stay warm and safe. If you're in Florida, be careful of the falling iguana. Folks, please continue to pray for the people in California who are suffering after having lost everything, including the lives of loved ones. Anyway, for Ed Vitagliano and the rest of our fabulous staff here, God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.